Today on the 01581, let's talk, a conversation with Senator Michael Moore and our Town Manager Kristi Williams. Hi, and welcome to this episode of the 01581 Let's Talk. I'm the host, Shelby Marshall, serving as a select board member here. And I'm joined by first guest, Senator Michael Moore. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Great.
Nice to see you again. It's been so long since
I know,
yesterday.
right? We saw each other yesterday. Thank you so much for being part of the Memorial Day celebration here in Westborough. I want to thank Town of Westborough residents, all the groups, Little League, the two bands, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, etc., and the residents for coming out and to honor our veterans, certainly those living, but those fallen. It was a beautiful day, and the weather held off, and
yes, thank God.
It was great. And before we get into the money discussion, I'm wearing green in celebration of the Celtics sweep.
Oh, okay.
Go Celtics, right? You know, I don't know. I was hedging my bet if I were betting that we were going to, see a game 5. So they won, so they get some nice needed rest. So now they're in the championship.
Yes, but the question, the duration of the rest, because the game tonight.
Yeah.
So we were watching it in a group of us, and we actually Googled.
Yeah.
If Dallas wins tonight.
Okay.
This would be the first time in history that you've had two sweeps in the NBA conference.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, in the conference finals for the championship.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
well,
so even going back to the Lakers, Celtics in the 70s or 80s, you never had this.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so.
Well, and also passing of Bill Walton.
Yes, yeah.
So a Celtics great, but maybe he's looking down and celebrating that 4th win.
So, did you hang around after the game on
No,
TV to watch some of the?
no.
They had some pictures of him.
Oh,
he was a Grateful Dead fan.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
No.
So
Did he have like the long hair? And all?
he was.
Yeah.
I don't know the hippie look.
Yeah, yeah.
They had him in the long hair, the headband. And
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
was.
That's great.
And there was a story that was told about how he took Larry Bird, and I'm forgetting who the other two were.
Yeah.
He actually took them to a Grateful Dead concert. Yeah.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. That's
So,
great. Well,
yeah.
well, here's to Bill and the many years of great play and love for the Greens. So speaking of green,
Yes.
what a great segue.
Everything, yes.
Right. So today we're going to talk about the Senate unanimous approval of a $58 billion budget for FY 2025. And in addition to that, there's some spending $1.3 billion generated from the fair share
Yes.
surtax, which we'll talk about in a minute. So highlights, Senator Moore, that you want to cover on the Senate bill that's been approved.
Well, just we're talking about a flat growth or flat economy, yet the needs, we still have a $1.8 billion increase in the budget. Good portion of that really goes to our our school aid and to the UGR, the unrestricted government aid.
Yep.
You'll see that we actually increased a little bit over the House. The House passed a per pupil minimum per pupil aid at $100 or $104. We bumped it up to $110.
Yep.
Now again, everything that we talk about now has to withstand going to conference.
Right, with the House.
With the
Right.
House.
Yep.
So we've also recently, when we did the Chapter 70 adjustment to the formula, the original formula was established in the early 90s, and that stayed in place until we changed it about 4 or 5 years ago. When we did it, it was after there were hearings and there was a lot of input.
Sure.
And a lot of the issues that I think more urban or gateway communities were dealing with. So, city of Worcester,
Yeah,
or
Fall River,
those
yep.
areas. They have more multi-language language issues, disciplinary issues.
Yep.
So, the previous formula, the complaint was it wasn't addressing those for these more urban areas. So we've changed it, and now we've actually had some communities that are saying that it doesn't fully, more the suburbs.
Kind of swung the other way, right.
So,
Yep.
so this
Sure.
is a, so this is a study that's going to come in and look at the Chapter 70 formula to see if it needs permanent, see if it needs some adjusting again.
Sure.
So that's a positive.
Yeah, I love that continuous improvement, and I also like the specific that it's a near-term deadline, that those recommendations have to be back, according to what the Senate has put in this, by June 1, 2025.
Yes, yep.
So that's
Yep.
great. Yeah.
So
Okay,
the other
great.
thing too is, and if you talked about in the fair share, one thing that we started doing
Yep.
during the pandemic was the universal school meals.
Yes. Yep.
And actually, in all honesty, this never made sense to me that it wasn't being covered. Where we expect, or by law, we force or mandate that parents send their kids to school.
Yeah. Right.
You would have thought that
Yeah.
as part of that, it would have been upon us that
Sure,
we have to
sure.
feed,
Yeah, yeah.
provide
Right,
meals.
right,
So there's $170 million for that.
Okay.
We also got another $150 million going to Commonwealth Cares program. That's dealing with early education programs for kids.
Yep.
So one thing when I was chairing the higher education community, one thing that all the colleges and universities had talked about the importance of early education.
Sure.
And if a child by the third grade doesn't have the proper foundation skills, it's
Yep.
very hard for them to make it up.
Yep.
So
Yep.
We've really been trying to
Sure.
investing in that.
Yep.
We also did some significant investment into the RTAs.
Yep.
And actually locally,
Just-
we actually
Yeah, go ahead.
we got 50. We did a local earmark, and we were able to get $57,000 for the fire department.
For equipment,
Yes, they have some equipment needs that they have.
Yep. I did want to just call out on the fair share, so this is just as a reminder for our viewers, this is a 4% surtax for those earning
Yes.
$1 million or more, annual income, $1 million or more. And so when you look at the fair share amendment investments, they're half divided into education and transportation, roughly
Yes,
speaking, right?
yep.
A little bit more on the education side than transportation. The other, go ahead, sir.
I was just going as far as the fair share, I don't know if people have been paying attention. It's so far we're far exceeding the estimates that we thought we were going to get for it. You know, when it was first passed.
Sure.
There are still some economists warning that with the true results of the fair share, it's not going to be known for several years,
Sure.
4 or 5 years down the road.
Yep.
But I think we brought in close to $2 billion.
Okay.
This year,
Okay.
and last year
Yep.
the estimate was around $1 billion. So we've seen a significant increase
Right.
in that, and this is going to be on top of the Chapter 70 funding.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can't be used to supplant it. It's got to be in addition to.
Right, and the commitment to that, I don't remember the original ballot legislation, but the commitment for use of those funds was education, transportation. Was there a third?
No, that was it. Just
That was it?
Yep.
Okay,
And
okay.
a trust fund was established.
Okay.
And there's an auditing process.
Okay.
So we get a separate account of the
Okay.
money coming in from the
Okay.
fair share
Okay.
to make sure we know that it is being spent where
There we
the
go.
voters is expected to.
Got it, okay, so that's always good, checks and balances. So the other piece of this fair share education component that I thought was interesting as I was reviewing our notes is the $117.5 million for free community college access across
Yes.
the Commonwealth for residents. So I think a continued commitment by our legislature, I know the governor's been pushing for this as well, is to give residents and their families an opportunity for low-cost, free education that's here accessible. And then there's a parallel interest here, I think, to some of the trades, really kind of educating. It's further in our notes here. Let me go into, got 10 million for career technical institutes to increase skilled worker population. So you start to, and there's STEM education money here. So I think a real heavy investment in education of, the population here, which is great to see. So rising
Yeah.
tide raises all boats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
So with this, the community college, the funding You know, when we look at community colleges, it's everyone traditionally thinks of the associate degrees. So hopefully, with the investment into the community college, we'll see more of the skilled
Yep.
labor, licensures,
Yep.
certificate type programs, so
Yep.
that we don't. You know, a lot of the industries that we deal with. It's great we
Right.
have such a great educational system here,
Yeah.
but the workers don't always need a 4-year degree or 2-year degree.
Right.
You know, if they want to go back after they get their certificate,
Sure.
But it gives them the opportunity to get right into the workforce.
Right, absolutely.
And not accumulate that student loan
Right.
debt, which we keep hearing.
Absolutely,
So-
right, absolutely. Well, definitely, it's good to see that investment. And on the fair share side, on the transportation side, just want to call attention to about 125 million for roads and bridges.
Yes.
Supplemental aid for cities and towns. I think, certainly that's critical, money that potentially the town of Westborough can access, and certainly that the region can benefit for, as well as, and I love this one, is 120 million for the RTA, so regional transit. And, within that is 10 million to incentivize connections for regional connectivity among transit routes. That's not to say that, Westborough is going to benefit directly, but what I love about it, because I've been in conversations, I'm a member of the CMMPO.
Oh, okay.
I'm a liaison to the Active Transportation Safety Committee, and Westborough, of course, is undertaking a whole downtown redevelopment plan. And one of the big parts of this is, like, how do you get people, not just around in Westborough, but how do you connect them to, I'm working in Worcester, but I don't have a car, or people from Worcester that want to work in Westborough, where we've got a lot of great companies, right?
Yeah.
So that connectivity, and those are two examples of communities. So that we have north and south, so we have great roadway systems.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to get around if you don't have a car, regardless of your age.
And everyone, and actually, now we're discussing it, everyone really thinks of when you talk about getting on the T or
Yeah.
the commuter rail,
Yeah.
it's to Boston.
Right.
But you're right, we have these connectivity issues
Yeah.
that we could,
Yeah.
yeah.
We absolutely do, and we're seeing growth north of here, and like Fitchburg, Leominster, all of that, and south. So I mean, it's kind of like, and then we've got the MBTA communities. I'm going to really stretch here. It's like great that we're building housing, but we have to also create connectivity for people who are going to
Yeah.
live and work to afford the housing.
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah,
I didn't,
so anyway, part of the work of the Senate has also, just going back to education a little bit, has been to fully fund the Student Opportunities Act by fiscal year 2027. So your work continues in that space.
yes. Yep.
And so we were talking offline that while the Chapter 78 is increasing to 110 per pupil, there's still a formulaic element to that. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Westborough here, which is going to get that 110. But again, then you have that study that's been required as well to
Right.
take a look at that, right?
So you got to look at the wealth of the community, and you'll have some communities that the wealth will actually classify them where they may get more Chapter 70 funding, so they may not see the full benefit of the
Sure.
per pupil minimum aid.
Yep.
Then it's reversed, where you'll have the wealth of a community
Yep.
where you'll see a benefit by they may not get as much Chapter 70, but the minimum per pupil aid will kick in.
Okay. Helpful to know all those elements. Okay. The other, we talked about transportation. Pretty significant investment in at 20 billion in mental health and mass
Yes.
health.
Yep.
So we've got funding for services for intellectual and developmental disabilities, nursing home facilities, substance use order treatments. So again, I think continued understanding that is an area. I just was watching the news before we got here, and the incidence of social isolation has grown, I think, 12% according to a recent study.
Okay.
And that's not just among people, that's even among like workers, like people.
Oh, from working at home now? And,
Working at home.
Okay.
And they were saying that, and I can't cite the source, but hybrid is great, and work from home obviously has its benefits, but some folks, like, not leaving their house for like 2 and 3 weeks at a time, right? They're just kind of working, they're getting their food delivered and all
Yeah.
of that, and they're just alone, and right? And so it was kind of a holistic conversation about, you know, the importance of interaction and what the impact that it has on
So
mental
it's actually
health.
funny you bring that up because I'm speaking tonight at a senior event tonight dealing with senior isolation.
Yeah, yeah.
So that
Yeah.
that would tie right into this.
And they were talking about how, you know, as a workforce, like this happened to be CBS this morning, and they were saying how we used to like do this bike ride, or we would go walk in Central Park, or we would have this really competitive softball game, and now it's like, well, it's hard to get people in because they're working from home.
Yeah.
And that's just one little segment of the population. So I think it's important that we continue to invest in mental health and support organizations and initiatives that, you know, are really trying to kind of recognize the benefit of technology and allowing, you know, flexibility and for work.
And if you think about this, all ties back into what we talked about. You had mentioned about the connectivity of it,
Yeah.
because if you have, and we do see younger adults where they don't want cars.
That was another part of it.
So,
yeah,
yeah, so
and
they-
it's lowest for I forget what generation, but at my age it was like 50% of people had their driver's license.
Yeah.
Right, we're kind of in that same
Yeah.
boat, and now it's like 25%.
Yeah. Well, I look at my daughter. She lives in Cambridge.
Yeah. Right?
Car's out here. She keeps the car out here.
Yeah, she
So
doesn't.
it doesn't need it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they have that. But in a urban area
Yeah.
like Cambridge, they have the mass transit.
Right,
Yeah.
you can get around pretty easily.
Yeah.
The other big part of this, I think, really important, is critical funding to support food insecurity. We have
Yes.
seen here in Westborough, our Westborough Food Pantry does a great job supporting the community. The community does a great job, individuals as well as organizations, but literally bare shelves because of the need is so great. And so we see here in the Senate bill, and I hope this continues through conference, 87 million in critical funding to support it, which is not the food pantry, but food assistance initiatives.
Right. So this is where for the public watching, all
Yeah.
the different, the 6 pages or 7 pages of highlights that we provided.
Yeah.
Now compound that with all the other initiatives that are in the budget. This is where now the conference committee
Right.
members.
Yeah, this is a highlight.
Yeah.
Literally a highlight
But so the
discussion.
public understand this. So this is now where they'll sit and they'll trade. They'll look at, if we have 10 million, I don't know what the House had.
Sure.
If we have 10 million, said they had 20 or 15, this is where they're, okay, well, you did this, we did this, you give us this, we'll take this over here.
Yeah.
So this is why it takes so long to go
Sure.
through a document. When, you know, the goal is to have it done by July 1st.
Okay.
You know, I think most of the time we're usually doing what they call a
The one-
1/12 budget,
Yep.
which is a 1-month budget.
Yeah.
So this is why there's just so many different line items, and
And who participates in that conference? Like
you have the
members there?
you have the Ways and Means chair
Okay.
of each branch, and then you have the vice chair, and then you'll have a representative of the minority party.
Okay.
So it's either the minority leader or they'll pick someone as their representative on
Okay,
that.
okay.
Then they sit and then they negotiate out, and this is something too that people always.
And is the Senate president there as well?
No.
Or, no.
But
And-
obviously from behind.
Yeah,
behind
there's
it
influence
is- yeah.
for both houses. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, the inner workings.
The inner
Fascinating.
workings,
Yeah,
yes.
and it is right. It's there is a negotiation that still has to take place. So.
And it's also interesting too is that if you follow this over the years, the House, when they do their budget, they know that there are certain line items that the Senate will always fund. And
okay.
And we know that there are certain line items the House funds. So the House will purposely underfund those
Okay.
or not even
Interesting.
fund them because they
Okay.
use that in conference.
Sure.
They make us fund it. Then
Yeah,
they
yeah,
go, oh,
yeah.
well, you want this.
Yeah, Got it.
So one of them for years, actually, I've been Tufts University in the vet school.
Okay. Yep.
So for years, the House would always fund it a little higher. I would then try to get an amendment filed to bring the funding up to that level, sometimes a little above, and I'd have Ways and Means. So well, listen, just let it drop, but
Yeah.
we'll concede to the House
Okay.
during the budget process, during the conference committee.
Yeah.
So we've always done. So there are certain certain times you'll let an amendment go down because you've been told that they'll
Yeah.
support it. And
Sure.
luckily this year,
Although
so
it's-
actually,
there's still a risk there, right?
oh yeah,
So-
there always
right?
yeah, there's
Right.
always a risk. Yeah,
Right.
and even though they tell you that,
Yeah, you're like, okay.
yeah, and then so you go back to the school and say, listen, you should be all set.
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, yeah. So you got to be careful of that, certainly. Yeah.
So actually, in this year,
yeah,
now
go
to,
ahead,
now to
please.
think about it, so Tufts was funded at 6 million last year, or 6.5. So the Senate budget came out at 7 million.
Okay.
And the House is at 6.5.
Okay.
So that's going to be a conference issue
Okay.
to see which
Yeah.
funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. There's also money in here for housing. So I guess so when we see you, when we kind of meet again sometime in July or August, depending upon how our schedules work out, there should have been at least couple conference committee meetings.
Yes, and conference committee, they do not
Report out?
They do not report. Everything's supposed to be confidential.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes, this way you don't get exterior influences
Yeah.
other than the Senate President or the
Okay.
Speaker.
Okay.
You don't. If they start telling the body that this is where we're in this, then now we're going to start pressuring them. And that's going to influence how they
Okay.
do the negotiations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so then, if a full agreement hasn't been met by July 1, then it's right around July 1, then the 1/12 would come
Yes,
out? Is
yeah.
that correct? Okay.
Yep.
And that would be based on, how do they pick that number, the 1/12 based on last year?
Yeah, we look at last year. Then
Last
we can
year.
just
Okay. Got
update
it.
it.
Okay.
Because so once the budget's passed, that funding will be in there to
Okay.
help cover the costs.
Okay.
So, we've, and again, we were talking offline before this, so,
Yeah.
we got a lot pending right now.
Yeah,
We've got a housing bond bill.
okay.
We've got an IT bond bill.
Mm-hmm.
So this is bonding authorization, and also there'll be funding in there.
Yep.
So the difference for the viewers, the difference between an earmark of funding allocation from a bonding allocation, a bonding authorization means it's gone through the legislature. It just gives the administration the authority to borrow money for that. So if I told you I had $20 million
Yep,
bonding authorization to redo the center of Westborough,
sure.
you then have to go to, after we pass it, you have to go to the administration. And the administration's the one that builds that cost,
Okay.
determines whether they want to do it or not want to do it.
So they have the authorization to do it, but they have the
Authorization
authorization
to borrow,
to borrow.
but whether they do or not is still in their, it's still their
I gotcha.
prerogative.
Okay.
And then they have to build that into their infrastructure plan, borrowing that they do every year. So at the end of November, so at the end of this calendar year, into early calendar year next year, they'll put out their borrowing plan,
Sure.
and it's got to be on, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it's got to be under 30%
Okay.
of state authorization.
Okay.
So we have a cap on how much can be borrowed per year.
Yeah. Lots of checks and balances, lots of process.
Yeah,
But-
but the thing is, we had a housing bond, IT
Yeah.
bond bill, we
And
got an economic
economic.
development bill, we still have the gun bill conference committee, we got a health care bill that's sitting there. We've been told we're going to be doing another climate bill. Trying to think what else is coming up. And we've got to try to get these all done by July 31st. And then another issue we have with the budget is, so.
I'll see you in the fall.
Yeah, well, so this is,
Wow. it's
the
a lot.
tight time frame we have is that when we get out July 31st,
Yeah,
if you have an issue that by the Constitution needs a roll call, that means they would have to call us back into session,
yeah.
which
yeah.
they never do.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that could be an issue for some
Yeah.
of these, the
Sure.
bonding authorization
Sure.
parts of this. But another part with the budget is after we finish it, the governor gets 10 days
Okay.
to review the budget and make any line item vetoes.
Wow.
So normally, in the off election year,
Mm-hmm.
we will come back in September.
Yep.
We will then do our budget overrides. So we got to try to get the budget done in time so that if the governor does their line item vetoes,
Sure.
if we want to override that, you need
still-
you need a 2/3 vote
And you
in
wanna
each
do that
branch.
before July
So we want
31st.
to try to do that as soon
Wow.
as possible.
And then you got people running for reelection.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you. I appreciate you making time here to
No, it's my
spend
pleasure.
some time here at Westborough. Thank you again for being part of our Memorial Day event, and keep us posted. Come back with the update on where this lands after a conference committee. All right?
Thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks so much. Be right back with an update from our town manager. Hi, and welcome back to the 01581 Let's Talk. I'm joined by Kristi Williams, our town manager. Kristi, welcome back.
Hi,
It's
thank
been
you.
a while.
Yes, it's
I know,
been a
right?
while, yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
we should do this is how we do the show.
Right.
No, just kidding. No, well, you've been busy and schedules have been a little challenging.
Yeah,
So what do you have for our viewers today?
Sure. So there's a couple of topics that we talked a lot about, I think, late winter into the spring, and so just sort of some updates. One would be the Youth and Family Services new service delivery model. So those contracts have been fully executed by both parties. So we are ready to go on July 1, which I think is really exciting.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes. So
yeah.
really being able to kind of bring forward the services and the service level, I think that I know as a select
Yeah.
board member that we want, that residents sort of expect and have asked for, and through a model that has enough staff to
Yeah.
do that. So
Yeah.
and the right staff. So
That's right.
from a qualifications perspective. So excited to work with them, and
That'd be good.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Great.
And on that, will there be some kind of get to know you aspect of that? I know Jen is the director there of the program.
Yeah. I know. So Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services is about to put out their new newsletter, and they want to sort of introduce this to their folks, and we're asking how they could introduce it to folks in Westborough. So we'll be working with them on announcements, and then maybe a little more quietly, she's having more, I guess, one-on-one introductions with some folks in town.
Great.
Our current staff member, Julia O'Neill Welch, is supporting those communications.
Excellent.
So that's good.
So
Yep.
over time, Jen will, I'm sure, meet many of you, and certainly will be accessible with more information to come.
Absolutely.
Great.
Great.
Excellent. Okay.
We are still working on transitioning our waste management program
Yep.
to pay-as-you-throw.
Yep.
So I think on April 30th, we had our first info session, which I think was equally valuable to the folks who came and listened, but also to the staff to get feedback on
Sure.
some of the questions that were out there. So Owen in our office developed some really great materials that are on the website. They're accessible through the Board of Health page, but also just through the homepage of the town website.
Sure.
And so really just sort of laying out, who's going to experience change and who's not.
Right.
And I think we can just say really simply that if you currently bring waste to the transfer station, the change you will experience is to need to put your waste, not your recyclables, into a pay-as-you-throw bag.
Right.
So.
Right. And those will be. This is all on the website, but those will be. You can purchase those at any of the area, markets. I mean, we're
figuring that out. Yeah.
But you won't need to go to a special store. They'll be generally accessible from where you typically buy your trash bags. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's,
Not at BJ's.
Yeah.
But, or Costco.
That's right. Yeah. It's probably more local.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have 2 more info sessions.
Excellent.
So one is on June 5th at 10 a.m. at the Senior Center.
Mm-hmm.
And then June 18th at 6 p.m. in Memorial Hall, which is on the 3rd floor of Town Hall.
Excellent.
So, 2
Yeah.
more
There were, I want to say 40 or 50 people
Yeah.
that attended
Yep.
the one in the evening that we had in Memorial Hall, and it was there were some great questions. There was a lot of confusion,
Yep.
and to your point, I think that has strengthened, like anything. We get feedback, right? It strengthens the messaging. So. Good. Okay.
Great.
Excellent. And again, if you have any questions, you contact the Public Health Department or certainly our town manager's office.
Yeah,
So.
that's great. And then the only other thing I wanted that we have going on, we have our second public workshop for the downtown development plan. That's being coordinated through the planning department, and that's June 5th from 6 to 8 in the Forbes building and Great Hall. And so that's going to be really interesting. They're going to talk a lot about the Rotary and what options we might have available to us
Excellent.
for traffic.
Excellent. And if you go to the planning department, on the website, there's information on the first presentation that was done as kind of part one of this. I actually was using it to reference something the other day and kind of
Great.
forgot how good the slides were. So encourage folks to check that out. And of course, our friends at Westborough TV taped that session, so you can always look for that. So good. Kristi, I know you're, we're going to wrap up the show here, but people are going to say, downtown Rotary, what's going on with the community center?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. So we have hired an OPM, an owner's project manager. So that's the person who sort of works on behalf of the town as the town's representative through the project. That's CHA is the company. And so their first action item is to help us employ an architect. So we have put that out to bid for the architect, and they're the ones who will really run those community info sessions. So we expect those info sessions to happen in July and August. We have, I think the minimum we were requiring for in-person sessions is 4, but we're also requiring that there's a way to provide feedback and comment remotely for folks who are on vacation or if it's just easier. So lots of different ways to give your input, and we're really looking forward to hearing from everybody.
And the timeline still is what?
We are still targeting October for the next town meeting vote, which would be an appropriation to fund the renovation or the fit up of the building.
Which is why we need the architect to give a realistic bid price for the fit up. Excellent. All right. Well, lots going on, and thank you for coming on. It's good to see you again. And thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the 01581 Let's Talk. I hope you find it valuable, and I'll see you the next time on the show.